Hi, Claire.
Hi, Scotty.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy Halloween.
Halloween. Like I was saying before I hit the record button, take two. This is like the first time it's on a Saturday, and we can't really have a time.
No having a time.
No having a time this week. I
No.
mean, we'll be having a time because the election is literally it's going to be less than a week away by the
Which
time you
is
guys are listening to this, but
very scary in
it's
a
very
different way
scary. We have
than
no idea what's going
Halloween.
to happen.
I know.
I'm
We
more
don't.
concerned about the after flow, like after election day, between, election day and inauguration day.
Yeah, like the coup that may have to occur.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's well, I mean, I feel like we're at the point where we're like, we'll cross that bridge when we get there kind
Yeah.
of vibe because every day is so day to day. We don't know what's gonna happen.
Right.
So
Well, until we get there, we have some breaking news.
yeah, some a beacon of light, of hope, a
Is it?
dream. I mean, I feel like people have been asking for this, so
I
finally
think so.
everyone got something they actually want in 2020 as opposed to getting smacked in the face.
True. The official Bravo TV Instagram account announced Kathy Hilton as joining the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Breaking news.
Literally breaking news. This is going to mean a big thing in terms of dynamic because, especially if you don't remember, a couple years ago, Kyle wasn't speaking to Kathy
Right,
or Kim because of her show,
right.
American Woman,
I don't know. It was like about
American
her
something. All
childhood.
I know is Alicia Silverstone was like played her mother
Right.
as like a
Yes.
young person.
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
Um, I think that if we've learned anything from Real Housewives of New Jersey is that family dynamics being like the center focus of in the franchises just leads to a lot more arguments and
oh,
fights because it just
fully,
escalates everything.
fully.
But they're Beverly Hills, Hilton, like celebrity people, so it's gonna be
Right.
buttoned up and very like almost campy. I feel like when Kyle went to Lisa Vanderpump's house and they argued, and like Kyle was wearing that hat. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of moments like
Yeah.
that
Well,
because they're not real.
what I'm interested in is that dynamic with Kyle being um she was kind of like once Vanderpump left, she kind of became like self-appointed queen bee.
Yeah,
She tried to play that role, but she doesn't really have the range to do so.
right.
But Kathy being basically that kind of Vanderpump age, or she might be older than Vanderpump, but either way,
Yeah, I'm
she's the
not
older
sure.
sister, and what that dynamic actually looks like, and then how the three of them
Right.
kind of like integrate. Because I know Kathy is protective over Kim, especially during her sobriety and everything, and Kyle was kind of like,
So she's like protective of the
right,
image. So she's like, stop talking shit because like that makes us all look bad. Also, in every famous family, there's like, and even in like the royals, there's like levels of
right,
power that you hold not only within the family but like in the greater. Like the Hiltons are like an elevated version of the Richards, even though they're
right.
related.
No,
It's
totally.
like Kate Middleton and like Beanie.
Well,
Like
what does
they're in the same realm, but like on different playing fields.
right?
You
I wonder, like, because we've already seen little snapshots here and there because the K's are ending. Like, is Chris gonna come in a little bit more and like hang out with Kathy? Like,
I don't know.
is this like, are
And what
we
do
just
they talk about? You
are we
know,
just transitioning from the Kardashians to like Beverly Hills being that like zeitgeist?
what if Real Housewives of Beverly Hills opens like the Kardashians, but they change it like tin tin
Oh
tin
my
with
god.
like the weird like artsy photos of them? What if that's the new like just the Kardashians taking over?
Oh
Like
my
they just
god.
take over the whole franchise. Like Ryan Seacrest is producing it.
Oh
I don't think
god.
Kris Jenner could just be on a show like that. I don't think she can just
True.
like chill out and be like one of six or five people. She has to be like
Now
the
I'm
showrunner.
kind of confused by this announcement because it says she's not just a friend of, she's family. Please welcome Kathy Hilton to Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. So is she friend of status? But
Oh,
family,
baby.
like the wording is a little weird. So it's like welcome her to the show. Is she just a friend of moment? Because she says she's not
Yeah, why
just a
does this
friend
have
of.
to be worded like the Watch What Happens Lives intros? Like
Right?
those are cutesy and fun, but like
It's a little cryptic. So I guess we'll see.
right. But that I mean, I guess that's the point of it. Leave it looking for more.
Right. So if she does hold a diamond, I will be curious to know what her tagline would be.
I don't think she's gonna hold the diamond. I
Yeah.
don't think that people who are that wealthy want any sort of like they'll do a thing, but she's like, jumping in,
Right.
like face first. It's like Larsa Pippen. She's like, yeah, I'll be on the Kardashians, but like I don't really care that much because like I can just go sit at home and.
Well, she was
do
on
nothing.
Miami.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Remember the short-lived Miami? She was on Miami, and then she moved to LA.
All I remember from Miami is the grandmother that was
Oh
like
my God.
about like a witch or whatever. And she was like, oh,
Miami was like, there's been a lot of dark moments in Real Housewives over the years from
that one
all the
was fucked
franchises.
up.
That one was really dark, and it killed the show.
The sales went out real quick in that tragic story,
Ugh.
which I guess makes sense because the context of the show is that like when serious shit happens, it's really not that serious,
Right.
and that was like you can't get around that. That was some like serious shit.
But yeah, no, that'll be exciting to see what happens. I mean, a little. Granted, we're not going to get it till 2021, but
Yeah.
or who knows when, depending on what kind of spikes with COVID, which we will be getting into in this episode. But let's move to the more pressing matter of what happened last night on Monday night of this week. The confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett. We knew it was happening. It was bracing ourselves for it, but it still feels like, fuck you.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when we're also trying to be hopeful about the election to have kind of like this fucked up situation. It really kind of is in a way happen. What I don't like is that everyone keeps calling her ACB, which is like not a thing. Like
No.
it wasn't really a thing with RBG either. Like calling her the notorious RBG is kind of like weird. I don't know.
Right.
Like she was like a very educated academic woman who held one of the highest titles in our country. Why is she getting like this cutesy fucking nickname? She's Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
But she just
have some fucking respect.
But also it makes sense for her in that she permeated into pop culture in that way because she was such an activist. She was such a person.
She was like a figure of feminism.
Right. So that just
that's
happens
a valid
to people
point to
like
me.
that.
But like what? So what the fuck is ACB? The fucking having a minivan with a lot of kids in it, like
gays.
Like
I mean, literally. She's well. Let's break it down a little bit for if you've been living under a rock. This woman has only served on the court for 3 years. She was appointed by Trump in 2017 for a lower court in preparation for this moment. It's been like written on the wall.
She's basically been groomed for this position when this position should not act in such a way. It shouldn't be so targeted and directed. It should be somebody that's shown their worth and then gets that point, not
totally
put on that pedestal to get that role.
And then, of course, all the progressives on just Twitter, in Congress, Senate, etc., have kind of outlined all of her experience and everything that's kind of she's done that's going to put our rights at jeopardy. She's voted against or voting down segregation. Like she's kind of been she's spoken about how she kind of aligned with, wasn't it Scalia?
Yes. So she worked for Scalia.
Yeah. So she kind of agrees with his thought process about segregation being a positive. She also sat on a board for a Catholic school that denied LGBT students as well as students who had LGBT parents. So she's kind of already talking about this, and she's talked about how she's against the ACA. So everything that progressives kind of hold dear, she's that person. And also the big thing about pushing her through so quickly is so that they had a majority in the Supreme Court to kind of fight against whatever the results are for this election.
Right.
That's the scary part, because she refuses to answer whether she'll recuse herself, knowing that that's like kind of the debate and the fact. Yeah.
And that's the issue with a lot of our politics, I think, is that because they're so antiquated and they haven't been readdressed, they're framed in this like everyone just like do the right thing, and that can go off the rails, and these people are elected until they die. That's not,
they're not even elected, they're appointed,
right? Of course, when she was doing her hearing, she said like, well, I can't speak on this and I can't speak on that, but the way you've previously ruled speaks for itself.
Right. Like people try to hide behind their words, and even her speech last night, which I caught just the smallest glimpse of, where she talks about like oh, a judge has to be impartial, put aside any political affiliation as well as any personal thing. That all sounds well and good, but we know that that's not the case. Even if that was the case, the way that progressives and conservatives just innately view the Constitution and law are just through very different lenses.
Right.
And because our system is written in a way and set up in a way for interpretation, you can literally make it make sense for your argument.
Right. Anyone
If
can
you want to.
twist anything into
Right.
what they want to make it to be.
Totally. And that's kind of where, our system is kind of rigged, or people talk about it being rigged or kind of set up in unjust fair ways. Like, what is justice in that regard?
It's all about the thought of groupthink, which is the short story. The lottery has been brought up a lot in the last 6 months because that's a big short story about groupthink that was super controversial when it was first published, because it was published in a publication. So at the time, everybody read it. And the idea of like a village murdering somebody and writing about that and was like, very taboo at the time.
Right.
But there's a reason why we keep bringing it up, because groupthink can do that. The New Yorker magazine, sorry, speak too fast sometimes, just did an article about how it's like a biological trait of ours. There's a book coming up about how it's a biological like survival trait of ours that when we are feeling a moment of contention, that it's hard for us to process facts.
Right.
Because all we want to process is things that back up how we feel.
Right.
So it's human nature to kind of settle into whatever is comfortable for you. And if you haven't been exposed to other things or other people or other cultures, it's going to be really hard for you to think and feel for them. And I think that it's just really a huge disservice to us that our court is as white as it is, as privileged as it is. There's some glimpses of diversity, but I just don't think it's enough because it doesn't really match the makeup of our country.
It's true. Like,
and
the only black man on the court is, tainted by his history with Anita Hill, which has now become relevant in 2020 because of Biden and Biden voting for Clarence Thomas and him having to kind of walk it back. And Anita Hill, who actually teaches at Brandeis, right down the street from us.
I know that.
Yeah, she teaches
right
there.
Down the road.
Right down the road from us.
See her.
She's actually come out in support of Biden, and she wants to work with him on some of these women's issues, which, Biden, for all it's worth, has kind of set up programs for women's and domestic violence. So, but yeah, and speaking to your point about the diversity in the court, there's only one other woman on there now, and she was appointed by Obama, I believe.
Yeah, I think that was Obama. I'm not good with.
Yeah, I'm not good with the dates, but either way, there needs to be more opportunity for diversity, and for, the people who are interpreting our Constitution needs to look like us.
Right. And also maybe more people doing that.
Yeah.
A bigger subsect of people doing that. We don't talk about Native people's rights when we talk about this stuff, and Indigenous people. We don't talk about like the immigrants and people like that in our country. We don't talk about a lot of groups of people. It's just really easy, I think, for it's a lot of people to be forgotten, because in order for you to become a Supreme Court justice, you have to be very highly educated. And we kind of are all aware that while the American dream is a good idea, it's a lot easier said than done. So most of the people that are on the court have like lived these kind of like bubble lives where they don't really maybe are aware or exposed to all the things that they should be.
100%.
They're making these decisions that really affect people,
right,
that they don't even see day to day.
Which brings us to the now topic of court packing, which is now the conversation Democrats are having in regards to, I guess, as a response to these three really conservative justices that have been put in these last 4 years, and in the very unjust and hypocritical way in which they were done, specifically Amy Coney Barrett, with the way that it was just rushed through, just pushed through. So there's this interesting conversation about, what do we do? Packing the courts, adding more justices, try and balance it out. What does that look like? Are there going to be more, regulations and restrictions
Yeah, do we
on
change
some
the
of
process? Do we change
Yeah.
like the basic requirements? Do we adjust some of those things?
these. I find it interesting. There was this conversation, because I watched The View, between Barry Weiss and Sunny Hostin, where Barry Weiss was talking about how her frustrations with Biden refusing to answer this question of whether he'd pack the court or not. And he said that, he would put together a coalition of bipartisan people who research what it looks like and, kind of, danced around the question, but it was still an answer. It was still
Right.
something,
Like, I have a plan to maybe have a plan.
Right. And then Elizabeth Warren also spoke on The View earlier this week and she said all options are on the table, which absolutely 100%, that's where we need to be. And Sunny was like, no, it's not about packing the court. It's about unpacking the court because the court is already packed. So
Right.
it's the idea of what the semantics of packing means. Whereas packing, in her definition was one party packing it against the other, which sets like an entire generation of people.
It sets the tone for an entire generation of people.
Yeah, 100%.
And Mitch McConnell talks so much about how hard it is to get stuff done. It's so hard to do things. It's impossible to do things.
Right.
The government is so messed up, and the Republicans love that narrative, right? Because they're anti regulation, they're anti having the government have more regulation, they're anti putting money into the government.
Right.
So they have this great narrative. Oh my God, it's so hard to get stuff done. We can't figure out giving you guys $200
Right.
so you can buy groceries. We can't figure that out. But we can rush in a very young, underqualified. Because I wouldn't say that Amy Coney Barrett is unqualified.
No.
Just because she doesn't follow my political ideals. Like, she's a legal professor at Notre Dame, and she has all these backgrounds, and she's followed the steps, from lawyer to judge.
I will say, though, the unqualified comment during her confirmation, they asked her what all of the rights of the First Amendment were, and she couldn't finish.
She did have a little bit of a brain fart.
A
little brain fart. That's why I'll say she's underqualified. But we've all been underqualified for a job. It's just like, should it be the one that makes decisions for an entire generation of people? And don't tell me that it's so hard to get stuff done when you're able to like speed somebody through the process of becoming one of the most powerful people in our country.
Well, and it's only hard to get stuff done because the filibuster is in place.
Right. And it's also hard to get stuff done when you don't give a fuck about whether or not people are hungry or like need money for whatever reason. You only give a fuck about making sure that the court is filled with people that follow your political ideal.
Because the conservatives have, because public opinion on a lot of conservative issues are just not in their favor. It's just not in their favor.
Yeah.
Majority of people support pro-choice. Majority of people support gay marriage. They support a government option for healthcare. They, so all these things.
Yeah, it's 60% to 40% of progressive versus conservative. So
right.
They put election day on a Tuesday in November when it's fucking cold and you probably have to work, so you don't go to vote because that way they'll still get there.
So instead of legislating and governing, they rely on the courts to uphold their ideals. So they pack the court with people that align with them that then can now shoot down, which is what they're trying to do now with the ACA. They want to rely on the Supreme Court to overturn it because they don't have an option.
And they don't want to value the majority.
Which, in fact, like
to their narrative.
Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act is the conservative option. Which is a whole nother tangent.
Imagine the amount of money we would save if we just fucking help some people.
Right.
We would save so much money.
Oh, 100%.
Go on and on and on.
Oh, 100%.
And then if you bring up like, oh, they do it in like Sweden and Norway and Finland and Ireland and all these other countries, they do these, social programs. They give people safe places to live. They help people who are addicts in unconventional ways, and it fixes the problem. People go, oh, well, that would never work in America.
It's like, why not?
Why? Like, yeah, like are Norwegian people like better than us? Is that what you're saying? Because you're not saying that. So like, why can't we try?
The thing that frustrates me about that, it's like, we already have these programs. Like, there are programs already here. Like,
it's just like supporting them and lifting them up and empowering them and giving them money or helping them. Sometimes it's not even giving them money. Like, a lot of non-for-profits that work with the homeless, people who are addicts, they get a lot of hit a lot of brick walls over stupid stuff that doesn't matter.
Right.
because they're, the focus isn't let's try to help the homeless shelters. The focus is all this other stupid shit that only helps like rich people.
Now, transitioning to election, we are literally a week away. A week away from today. By the time y'all are hearing this, less than a week. I know most of us have probably already early voted. I did.
Yeah, my ballot was accepted.
I know. I like that. I like that we can track them. But
yeah. Well, we live in New England, so
we do,
in suburban towns. So
I mean, I have noticed some of my mutuals on Twitter have been posting their early ballots being accepted, which is nice and encouraging. So, I think without getting like ahead of ourselves, like we did in 2016, it feels. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm also, because we've already experienced the worst, I'm also emotionally prepared for the worst, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying not to like think about it. Take things day to day.
True. Like we did our part. Whatever happens at this point.
That's what Gar, my boyfriend, said. But then it's really hard not to, because I mean, first of all, one of the most recent Trump rallies was near us in Manchester, New Hampshire, which means that people from all over New England went to it. Because we do have the Trump fanaticism here too, even though we live in like a liberal bubble, there are still people that are obviously conservative and they have Trump signs, and Salem, New Hampshire has, Trump stores where you can go buy Trump signs. So there's definitely that vibe in certain parts of New England. And watching all those people without masks and all that stuff is kind of like, oh, geez. Like, as we are spiking, it's kind of like, oh, no, like, that's probably not going to help at all. And then it's like it's like insult to injury, because you're like, fuck all these stupid, like, Trump people. Like, fanaticism about Trump is just scary.
It is scary. I mean, I get being a stan for, a pop girl or like your favorite like musician.
Like Aubrey.
Oh my God.
Rise up, Aubrey.
Rise up, Aubrey.
With your insider info on your Twitter account. I have receipts.
Oh my God. Fun fact. She told me backstory for anybody that doesn't know, I have been a Danity Kane stan for a long time, and I actually got to work with Aubrey during her Dumb Blonde era, and then subsequently like the Danity Kane like reunion, not the volatile reunion, but the one after that. And in between those two events, I was able to hang out with her in Connecticut for some random party.
She's lovely.
She gave me all of this tea in 2017. Like, I knew this. So when she started tweeting it, I'm like, oh, she's going there.
Yeah.
So it was a very funny thing to be like, oh, I've heard this tea.
Right.
It was a very funny thing to see that, like, oh, I heard this tea, but now
she's like
everybody else knows it.
On it. Like, she's probably like said this to like definitely all of Danity Kane, like whoever the fuck else she's like messing around with. It's all like in LA, like sipping a glass of wine, like, oh, by the way, Barron threw a plate across the room. Like, she's just told these stories anecdotally, and now she's like, I'm gonna put it in writing. I feel like now, if you have a blue check mark and you tweet something, that's putting it in writing, even though that sounds stupid. I wish she gave us more of like the Mary Trump stuff, like, or like the girl that was friends with Melania, like, fuck Christmas. Like, you don't have like him like saying some crazy shit. The only thing that was like pretty good like that was about Barron, and like Barron's a kid.
But I mean, like,
we've all seen like Succession and other TV shows about rich people. Like, of course he's a terrible kid.
Right. Who knows? Maybe we will get more tea, like if Trump is out of office and she feels a little bit more empowered when he's not there.
Frisky.
She may use this as a book and be able to like use it as some.
I love how Teresa Giudice, she doesn't have anything to say. Teresa's like, I don't know what happened on Celebrity Apprentice. I was just staring into space.
I mean, but like she should. She asked Trump to help her husband and like he didn't. That's so funny. But anyways, back to standing. So like I get standing like public figures. I do not understand standing a politician. Even on our side, where everyone was like, oh my God, Hillary, and like
people do it with Bernie, people do it with Elizabeth Warren.
It's just like these people are policymakers and they're supposed to be doing
rock stars.
Yeah. So I don't understand it from any faction, because it clouds having that kind of perspective on a public figure that is in office. It skews
It's dangerous, because instead of being like, oh, I don't care that she's wearing an atrocious outfit, it's like, you don't care that they're making a policy or saying something
Right.
that's super dangerous or
Right.
problematic or whatever it might be.
Even Obama had some policies and bad takes, specifically around Flint, Michigan, that, should have been critiqued by our side, which kind of went largely unchecked because
People were too busy standing.
so like when it comes to Trump and like his cult, we'll call them, I feel comfortable using that word.
Right.
What is your take on how they just are blind? Like what do you think it is?
I don't know. I really like, it's hard because you don't want to say that a group of people are just like, they're all racist.
Right.
Racism. But I do think that there's something to be said in the fact that he capitalizes in what makes people comfortable
Right.
in sort of saying things that are like Americana, things that like the middle of the country. They like his brash sort of saying whatever he thinks and saying whatever he feels, and that brash honesty that there's a large population of our country that I think don't want to have decency.
Right.
They're annoyed by the idea of, and I don't think it's political correctness, I think it's decency.
Yeah.
They are annoyed at the idea of thinking for someone else. We're a very like individualistic country. We're very about my situation, my. We don't think of the greater good. But yeah, I don't know really what to feel like about the Trump people, because I get so many different. I actually had a Trump supporter. I know that this person has a lot of Trump supporting friends. They have themselves have not said how they specifically politically align.
Right.
But they're like, I don't mind Trump supporters. It's the people who are fanatical about him that I
Right.
don't support. I don't see a difference there, because
Right.
he is so extreme that if you are supporting him, you are now, in my opinion, that extreme.
No, I agree, because specifically around this the social movement that's happened this year with Black Lives Matter finally breaking through and being like, oh, this is real for a lot of people. For a while, I think people thought it was just like a social media thing and like a fringe, but now people are the general public of all walks of life are starting to really embrace it and like, no, this is an actual movement. The sentiment has been, it's not enough to not be racist, you have to be anti-racist
You
and
have to work against it. Yes.
and actively anti-racist. So these people who are voting for him and being supportive of him and his ideas and just him as a human being, they're participating in that racist system and they're not working against it. So even if you may have a Black husband, you may be Black yourself in supporting him, you may,
Yeah,
be
I mean, there's
a
that
minority of any kind and, or have friends that are minorities while still supporting him, you are still participating in that ideology and system.
Well,
So
this goes back to what I was talking about before, which is if you are not exposed to things, you cannot therefore know about them. And if you don't know about them, how can you care about them or
right.
change them? This goes back to what I was saying about groupthink. The majority of people are thinking a certain way, telling you that that's the right way, even if it makes no sense, even if you're a woman,
Right.
or you're gay, or you're somebody that he's actively, said that he's kind of going to work against.
Right.
If everyone around you is like, no, it's good, you're going to be more likely to participate in group thought.
Yeah,
And
and that's so true. That's such a good point, because
if you didn't read The Lottery and you just asked your friend in high school or middle school who did read to just like what happened in that short story so I can write my journal entry, I highly recommend you Google The Lottery and you read that short story. Because it shows it's extreme, but like I feel like we're at that point now where if everybody
truly,
is saying this like thing is good and it's going to be good for us, it's going to be good for the economy, we need money, then you kind of forget about
right.
everything else,
Now,
which is super dangerous, and history repeats itself.
totally.
Learn.
Now, jumping off of that, and now that we've established the rules of the game of what we're playing right now, with a week left, the two campaigns are like starkly different in how they're campaigning in the midst of our third wave of COVID, which we will get into shortly. But just the contrast of, you know, Trump is still out doing these rallies with people who are either deniers or detractors, or they don't think it's as serious as a problem as it actually is. They're showing up without masks. They're not social distancing. Pence himself is now on the campaign trail after 5 people in his inner circle, including his chief of staff, have all tested
Right. And
positive.
also I heard on the news, CNN referred to him as the guy that gives the mints, the guy that has your hand sanitizer. Is
Yeah,
the direct quote of one of the people that has tested positive for COVID, which means he has obviously had direct contact with Pence,
yeah,
unless he's going around in a hazmat suit and somehow the press has missed photographing that. I don't think
right,
we would have noticed. The bubble boy was, the guy giving the mints.
right.
So he's not following it's not even that it's like the CDC guidelines. He's not following
He's
medical
the head of the
science.
task force. He Pence himself is the head of the coronavirus task force and is not adhering to any of the guidelines. I don't know.
So
I'm
there's a lot of discussion about mask fatigue, COVID fatigue. We're going back into how the human brain works.
right,
You have to do something and it keeps happening and there's no end in sight, no definitive end in sight.
right,
And it's stressful and it's affecting your day to day and it sucks. You just start to kind of be like, I don't want to do this. And
right.
especially if you don't get COVID and you go for an extended period of time where COVID isn't really like directly relating to you, you're like, why am I doing this? Why do I have to do this? And I think collectively, a lot of people are at that point because we are seeing another spike. I don't think it's just because the weather has changed. I think
Right.
it's because we're having a huge issue getting people to consistently wear masks and consistently do things. I think people are aware of things and they try
Right.
to, but they're not being consistent.
Totally. And just the way that these campaigns are attacking this in the last week, like it's like we'll get into more detail about like how day-to-day people are kind of dealing with this uptick and like whatnot. But it's interesting to me. I want to know what kind of impact the way these two campaigns are campaigning for this last week amidst being the face of a potential second shutdown with no stimulus in sight. We have Biden and Kamala doing social distance campaigns. I know Obama just did one in Philly last week where his crowd was very small and scattered about. Everybody wore a mask. And then I don't know. It's a confusing time and it's sending so many mixed messages. So I can understand from some perspective there the if you're not really researching the right thing, how your information and filter the information that you're being filtered can be really confusing for you, especially if you don't have any kind of incentive to Google beyond your
Right.
bubble.
Or if no one in your community or your household or your circle has got COVID,
Right.
or they got it and they showed no symptoms.
Right.
You might be like, what is the story here if your
Right.
business is failing or your industry is struggling? Because your personal, what you are worrying about first, and that's just like a biological reaction, is to protect yourself. Like, this
Right.
is hurting me, and this COVID thing isn't. So, like,
Right.
why the fuck are we doing this? I get that human reaction, but that's why we learn critical thinking, and that's why we always talk in business to remove emotion and personal value. That's why we say check your shit at the door when you come into work, so that you can look at it like you're writing a 5-page paper about a topic you've been assigned in science class, and not looking at it with all these like personal filters.
It'll be interesting to see over the next week like what these strategies kind of communicate to voters and what it actually says, especially even on actual election day, how it affects turnout.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Because Republicans historically do vote on the day of, and Democrats historically do voting early, more so
Right.
percentage wise. But because of that individualistic thing, will Republicans, if things continue to escalate, maybe next week they get worse or whatever it might be, will they
Right.
want to go out because they're so worried about themselves? It's an
Right.
interesting thing to think about.
It is interesting. So we're going to take a quick break and then we'll dive into the actual nuances and numbers of where COVID is at today, and like
I don't know if we'll have specific numbers, but we will talk about how the numbers are more.
how the numbers are more, and how it's actually affecting some very real situations,
Yes.
especially like within us right now.
Yeah.
So we'll be right back. Hey guys, so we're just taking a small break just to remind you all to follow us on all of our social media. You can find us at Having a Time Podcast over on Instagram and Having a Time Pod over on Twitter. You can find exclusive videos, photos, content, memes, all the things. So check us out over there. And now back to the episode. All right, we're back. Okay, so we want to talk about COVID and the supposed third wave, which I wasn't aware the first one ever ended. So
And I think it's technically the height of the second wave.
right, we didn't really peak yet, but to give some context, as of today, it is October 27th, and we are at 8.78 million cases just in the United States, and we are at 226,000 deaths, which is crazy, and we're still spiking, and I don't know how to feel about it. I know last night in our area where we live, and where you work at a restaurant, we got this, Amber Alert emergency.
Yeah, like a snowstorm or a hurricane was coming.
Right, like an emergency notification to let us know that our town is now labeled red and serious threat to stay inside, wear your masks, practice, general hygiene, etc. So, Claire, you have some personal experience because you work with the public. Kind of why we're a little distant while we're here. And yeah, talk about your experience, what it's like, kind of navigating working with the public while trying to remain safe. Because I imagine a lot of people are in this boat because of just the nature of we don't have a stimulus and unemployment really ain't shit.
Yeah,
So
like that fatigue I was talking about earlier definitely comes into play. Not only with the lower level employees, but when you go up the totem pole, I think it becomes even more intense because the financial obligations of everything and of being open. Restaurants are one of the highest risk businesses you can own. There's a 10% success rate on average. So that means 90% of restaurants that open close within the first 5 years that they open.
right.
So the margin for error is already there before COVID. And then obviously this changes our industry so much. I mean, there's other industries that I think have been more brutally impacted, like the live music industry, for instance.
Yes.
But there are more people who are employed in the restaurant industry. So
Yes.
I think that's why it's not just because it's a personal thing for me, but why I think it's like just kind of important thing to speak about. You worked in the restaurant industry, so you know that cutting a corner is definitely
how we met.
That's how we met. Cutting a corner is definitely, unfortunately, a part of a lot of restaurant cultures. There's a lot of restaurants that do it right. There's a lot of restaurants that spend a lot of time and invest a lot of money in making sure that things are done the right way. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of focus to make sure that cleanliness standards and all those things are met. So there's a lot of restaurants that don't do that because
They didn't do it pre-COVID, and
they're not going to do it now.
right.
So that's kind of like, one aspect of it that you got to always think about. Like I tell people stories about like restaurants because I've been doing this for a while and I've worked at a lot of different types of restaurants. And they're like, what? Like, excuse me, what? It's like, yeah, like just because your plate costs X amount of money or, people's perceptions of the front, what they see in front of house of a restaurant does not really necessarily show what's happening behind the scenes.
100%.
So with COVID, obviously you can imagine that there are places that do cut corners with that. I work on a street where there's like a bunch of different restaurants. So it's interesting to see how each restaurant culture kind of deals with the issues with it. There are different ideological ways to look at any business model. And I think that hospitality is one that benefits from thinking about the guest before anything else. And there's definitely an ideological thought process that thinking about profit comes before anything else. And I've worked in both capacities, both extremes. I've worked in give them whatever they want. I've worked in tell them no. I've worked in restaurants where people got the wrong burger, but they're like, did they eat it? Like, charge them for it. And I've worked in places where, like, they'd expect you to go down the street and get them something from the grocery store if we didn't carry it to cook it for them. So I've worked in, like, all sorts of extremes, but I think that the restaurants and all businesses that are taking the abundance of caution, even though it's costing them money, are going to, down the road, have more success, I think, financially, and have more stability in our economy than those that are cutting the corners. I think that the people that are not acting like this is something that we should be mitigating day to day are doing themselves a huge disservice. That, yes, it's really hard, and it would be super cool if we just made the same amount of money that we were making before without spending more. But that is not the nature of our business. That's not the nature of the industry. And that's not putting the guest first. And that's not putting your staff first. And that's a big issue with the restaurant culture, too, is that when you're cutting those corners, you're really putting the people who are at the lowest level of the totem pole at the highest risk.
Totally.
The dishwashers, the host stand. You know, if you're not putting in processes for them to be safe, they interact with the most people or the most people's stuff, they're going to get sick.
Right.
And it's an inevitability of it too, is that instead of trying to fight it or like chastise your staff and be like, you better not be going out and you better be following all the rules, you as the higher up need to understand that someone's probably going to get it, and what is my game plan for that, and how
Right.
can I prevent that?
And they're likely going to be in contact with people who do work here, and like, what does my staff look like at that point? And you know, what's the most responsible?
Because the majority of people that work in restaurants don't have health insurance.
Oh, 100%.
We don't get vacation time. Sick time, not a thing.
Luckily in Massachusetts, they do have a paid sick thing that every employer has to implement, even for minimum wage workers, but it's oftentimes it is earned. So it's based on hours worked, and you know,
Right, so that can be hard to accumulate in an
yeah.
industry like the
So
restaurant
there's still a
industry.
little
lot
like
of people
wonkiness
hold
there.
multiple jobs. I don't think I know very many people who work in kitchens right now who don't work with someone else in the kitchen who has 2 gigs.
Right.
Because that's a very commonplace in all aspects of the restaurant industry, is that, you know, you like the restaurant you work at, but they don't have the shift, so you just work one day a week there. So that's like cross-contaminating staffs and stuff like that. And then it's just like super sad because these great places that closed, you know that they were probably doing everything right. And that's probably one of the reasons why they closed. Because no one wants to go to the bar and be told to sit down, put a mask on, do this, do that. But at the end of the day, I think if you are enacting those things and contact tracing and kind of going above and beyond, that abundance of caution is going to show people like, wow, this restaurant really is like, must be clean, must be good. Better name for yourself, you know?
Yeah. So in your experience, what kind of challenges have you seen what kind of challenge have you been faced with you know, in this weird, we're reopening, we've been open, but now it's getting cold, so now we have to transition service from outdoors, which was the safer option, to now indoors, and now our town and state, and I'll say country, is spiking considerably. Like, what are the challenges that you're seeing?
I mean, it's weird when you know the end is near. I was talking about the failure rate of restaurants. We both worked at restaurants that closed.
Literally 2 of the restaurants that we worked at together are non-existent now.
And there's more on my list of restaurants that I've personally shut down. No, I'm just kidding. I have a lot.
And those ones are closed before COVID. So
right, they put closed before COVID. So speaking to that like failure rate that's just inevitable in the industry before COVID, you see the end coming. So this is a weird like collective seeing the end coming. We're the first line of like, okay, like everybody's getting it at the bars. Like we're going to be blamed for this. possibly going to be shut down again or moved to takeout only again, which is a huge blow for the majority of restaurant models. When restaurant owners, I think, see when they see all these CDC regulations, they see money being spent and not money
Right.
being earned. Like less capacity. You should use tons for appetizers. Maybe discourage people from buying appetizers. Well, appetizers are a large way of how restaurants up check averages. So they don't want to do
Right.
that, and they don't want to invest more money in takeout things. They don't want to buy the tons. They don't want to pay for the ink to put up the signs. They don't want to have the box of masks because what if we buy it and nobody uses them? And what if we have hand sanitizer on every table, then all the hand sanitizer is going to walk just like ketchup bottles and salt pepper shakers do. And it's like, I go back to the New Yorker magazine thing where it's like people don't want to hear facts when they have an emotional
Right.
investment in the argument. And it's
Totally.
your business. You love it. You've seen it maybe be taken away from you. Really hard to take yourself out of the conversation.
Right.
And that's kind of where we're at right now.
Right.
It all depends on how you look at the world. I know restaurant owners who are huge science nerds to the point where they're like, maybe a little bit too obsessive compulsive, like sharing with the staff every article they read and like side note, COVID can live on glass for this amount of hours and this, that, and the other. And then there's the whole opposite end of it where they're
Right.
like, I don't like signs, they're kind of tacky. And
Right.
you guess not wearing masks isn't going to stop you from getting coronavirus. So like, why tell them to not do that? Like, why tell them to put their mask on when they get up from the table? What's the point? It's just a losing battle. You're going to waste your time from doing something else, aka making them money. And that's like an ideological thing, like I was talking before about I guess all business maybe has this, that some restaurants look at it profit and some restaurants look at it like, we provide this hospitable service. We have a certain level of what we do here. And then some restaurants are like, how much money can we make? How much money can we make? How fast can we sell the burgers? How fast can you make the burgers? How fast can you bring them? Go, 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 go. And it's like, table 5 isn't ready to order yet. They're here,
Right.
they're here to relax, like calm the fuck down. And that's just how the restaurant industry is.
Right. You actually made a good point. You actually said something that I wanted to piggyback off of. That mentality of like, oh, this guest not wearing masks isn't going to prevent you from getting sick. Like, it's inevitable. That seems to be the thought process and thinking that's permeating right now. I believe it was Mark Meadows on CNN recently talked about this when he was being questioned by Jake Tapper. He said, well, what are you doing to contain the virus? He goes, we're not going to contain the virus.
So like, fuck it.
We're going to work for the vaccine and try and find remedies and whatnot. So it's like, but no, there needs to be both, because I don't know. It's an unpredictable virus. It's already being shown to be mutating. We don't know what that looks like.
I know,
and people
keep saying after COVID, particularly in the restaurant industry.
It's like,
They're
there's
like,
no
after COVID, maybe we'll have dance parties. After COVID, maybe we'll have
There
a
is no
kissing
after
booth. And it's
COVID.
like, there is no after COVID. Did you get a memo that I didn't fucking get?
Right.
Like, did Fauci like send you a text message and nobody else? Do you know like Sanjay Gupta? Like, what are you talking about after COVID? Do you have a date?
Right. No, there is no after COVID. This is going to be a new norm. What it comes down to is having these mechanisms and things in place. How do we deal with it? And right now, we're not in a place where we can look at what it looks like to live with, because we're still that. We're still in the thick of it. We're not going to know what it looks like to live with COVID until the vaccine is there, or until there are some, drugs and medications and,
it's not so bad to get
therapies.
it like it is with the flu. And speaking to that too, there's a lot of people that just aren't going out. So there's people that are super cautious. They want to sit outside on the patio. They never want to come inside. There are people that like just don't care. There are people that are kind of somewhere in between, like, oh, it's a little chilly.
Yeah.
I don't think we should do the patio today. Oh, look, they have the door propped open. We'll sit inside. What's the big deal?
Right.
But there's also people that are just like at home.
Which we all knew this was going to happen. We knew this was going to happen. It makes our lockdown in the spring really frustrating, because it's like, oh, what was the point? Because there's nothing else happening. But I guess it'll be a week by week basis on where we're at with this.
Just
Yeah.
financially struggling. Like they might not get shut down because of COVID. They might just be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, we don't have fucking money to do this anymore because we're not making enough money."
Well, now that we've effectively depressed everybody listening to this podcast,
we're doomed.
We're doomed. We are going to take a break, and we'll be back.
We're gonna go cry.
We're gonna go cry, have a little existential crisis, and we'll be back to wrap it up and talk about who is having a time this week. All right, and we are back, and yeah, it's the favorite segment of the episode. So Claire, who is having a time this week?
So my story. I mean, my person who is having a time is billionaire Bill Gross, who you probably don't know by name. He's the founder of PIMCO, which is like, or one of the founders of PIMCO, which is a very famous and successful investment firm. Hence why he's a billionaire. He's having some legal issues because he has been mind torturing his neighbors by playing the Gilligan's Island's theme song on repeat all night long. Which, if you haven't heard or seen Gilligan's Island, it's not something that you would want to hear more than once. It's not Bird is the word, like it's not that annoying, right? But it's definitely annoying enough that if it was playing on repeat and you were a billionaire living next to a billionaire, you'd be pissed. So his neighbors took legal action against him because he has this giant lawn structure, which I assume is like a hedge of some nature that is an eyesore. And it's covered in netting because it needs to like regrow. It's like going through some shit. It's also having a time. And that wasn't approved by like the neighbor association. So the neighbors were like, "This Bill Gross, like your lawn sucks. Like we're fucking billionaires. What are you doing, bro?" And he got so pissed off by this that he started playing the Gilligan's Island theme song every night, like to try to drive them out. And so they were like, "You're crazy. We're going to put cameras up to record you doing this because, like, this is clearly we can take legal action. You know, our right for our right to quiet enjoyment is what it's called legally." And he said, Bill Gross was like, they didn't put up cameras to record my Gilligan's Island concerts that I have every night. They put up cameras to be voyeurs and watch my wife and I, because we like to skinny dip in our pool, and they have footage of us skinny dipping.
Wow.
So we just spent, however long we spent talking about people fucking dying, right? And how people have to go to work every day to serve idiots cheeseburgers to survive. And Bill Gross is like playing Gilligan's Island having a time. And that's America.
That's so funny. Like, what world? He's living his petty life right now.
All night long, Bill Gross. What's crazy when people do things like this, because this is a common thing, especially in places with high real estate value, because you don't want to leave because you just like spent all this money like living on a fucking cliff looking over LA. Why the fuck would you want to leave?
Right.
It happens in the Hamptons and shit where people like play music and do these like torturous things to try to drive out the neighbors. But then you also have to listen to the Gilligan's Island theme song all night. Which is probably what's driving you a little nutty.
Maybe he loves it. It's his favorite song.
He loves Gilligan's Island.
It's his favorite
Ginger.
song.
He's got a thing for Ginger.
Yeah, maybe so.
Gilligan's Island was one of my favorite TV shows when I was a kid. So
I can't relate.
You can't relate?
No.
I watched a lot of weird shit when I was a kid because my mom was like weird. She was like, you can only watch Dream of Jeannie and shit.
I mean, I watched that stuff.
Somehow that was going to like make me a better person by making me watch shit from the 70s. The 70s is fucked up.
I did watch a lot of that stuff, but I didn't watch Gilligan's Island. Just didn't speak to me.
Gilligan's Island's a little bit before that too, because it started, I want to say, in black and white. I think it's like super fucking old.
Likely.
I don't know.
Like I said, it's not really. It wasn't on Nick at Night when I was growing up, so.
Right. There's a lot of holes in Gilligan's Island. You know, yeah. It's like the fat guy from Lost. Like, how is he still that fat?
I mean, well, Lost is like the modern drama of Gilligan's Island.
I think Lost goes a little bit more in depth than Gilligan's Island does when it comes to subtext.
I don't know. I'm standing by that statement.
You're like, they're islands. People got deserted. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Truly. I stand by my statement.
Lost, Gilligan's Island, you know. Like, oh, did you watch Lost? No, I'm like a Gilligan's Island kind of person.
Truly. Truly, truly, truly.
Oh, that's great. Oh man. I could talk about Gilligan's Island for a while, but I won't.
That's
just
another
will say
podcast. That'll
that's
be our spin-off
our Gilligan's
where
Island.
we dissect Gilligan's Island and Lost, and we put together
There
the
are
connect.
so many fucking podcasts that there probably is a Gilligan's Island podcast.
I know.
Somewhere in the ether.
Somewhere someone's having a time.
Someone's having a time with Gilligan.
Oh, that's so funny.
So who do you think is having a time?
So because I have such a vast a plethora of interests, it's gonna be Ariana Grande.
Ariana Grande.
Ariana Grande. So her new song and album Positions. Song dropped on Friday. It's cute. Album drops on this Friday, and it's rumored to be all about sex.
Ew.
This is why she's having a time. Admittedly,
she's finally doing that jump, like the full.
So I'm not saying that I listened to the leak of the album that came out yesterday. I'm not saying
That's
that.
illegal.
But if I did listen to the leak, I would be able to confirm some of those theories, talking about,
Saucy.
talking about her genitalia and
Ooh.
literal positions and, what have you. So
But hasn't that happened before though?
What?
What's the song with Nicki Minaj in it?
Oh, Side to Side, but that's different. It's not the same.
That's different. That's talking about getting fucked so hard that you can't walk straight. What do you
Okay,
mean
that was
that's
her first
different?
toe. That was her toe.
What about God as a woman?
Well, I'm talking about.
This is like intense. Is this like Madonna? Like when she really like leapt?
Yeah. It's similar to that. Yeah.
Is this Britney Spears with the Teletubby?
No, that was even like
tame. That's tame.
Like that's like PG-13.
Is this Christina Aguilera doing dirty?
Oh, it's a little bit more explicit than that. Yeah.
Oh, a little bit more adult.
Yeah, and we can divulge into the details. Once I can actually listen to the album.
Right.
Because like I said, I didn't listen to the leak.
Right.
That happened. Just like nobody listens to the leaks.
We respect artists.
It's 2020. We don't listen to leaks.
Right.
But
it's odd because I was actually just this morning got into a YouTube hole of watching Ariana Grande way back at the beginning on Nickelodeon.
I know her transition and like her evolution from like quinceañera dresses to Madam President. Did you see the new video?
I have not seen the new video.
She's like,
I'm in the dark.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still catching up.
I need to start giving you homework.
I'm watching her on Nickelodeon as a child.
Yeah,
because I think it's really interesting to watch her be like a comedic actor.
Yeah.
Because that kind of is, I mean, she's not funny, like, oh, LOL, but she is like a persona. And I think that's what's interesting is when pop artists sort of.
I can agree with that.
Like Lady Gaga, like, she's not just like her day-to-day self. She's kind of like this person that she created.
Yeah.
And she started by being this like really goofy, silly character.
Yeah.
And she is like a really great little comedic actress. I like watching people at the start.
Well, I say she's having a time because she is in her I guess every pop girl goes through their, sexual liberation moment, and that's really what's happening, and I'm here for it. It's a little, you got to find something to grab onto, and if that needs to be a penis, then let it be. So be it.
we all need something to look forward to. Me, I'm looking forward to the Saved by the Bell reunion.
Oh yeah, that's coming out. I did see the trailer for that. Yeah. I'm who's all in it?
I don't know.
I know Jessie is in it.
Getting reworked. The Craft is getting reworked.
Oh yeah.
Because things from the past are comforting and nice, and nostalgia makes us feel like warm and fuzzy, and we need
truly.
That now.
Yeah,
really
I'm grabbing onto a lot of nostalgia at the moment just because it's
Ariana Grande kind of, in my opinion, is like, I love Ariana Grande. So it's cool to see her like go into her next transition.
And it's cool right now with what I will say about like pop music and pop culture right now. What's cool is that things that we loved growing up in like the early 2000s are now starting to be like referenced and cycle back. So like even new stuff feels really nostalgic to us. So I'm like very
Yeah,
in
like,
it.
I like that, like magic and mystery, like Riverdale and Sabrina the Teenage
Oh, and
Witch
like
on
bubble
Netflix are
letters.
a
We
thing.
got the metallic bubble letters and fonts. Like I'm
Yeah,
very, very into those.
witchcraft is like back as a trope
Yeah.
and a theme in teenage stuff. I love shit like that.
Now we have 6 days until the election. So uh find some self-care. Find something to take yourself out of the news cycle, because at this point, if you voted early or if you already have decided on who you're voting for, which frankly, like if you're undecided at this point, I don't know if there's hope for you. um I suggest, unplug from the news cycle, because it's just going to get crazy after Tuesday. So, plug back in on Tuesday, do some self-care, do a face mask, do some skincare.
Get a good soak on.
Yeah, take a bubble bath, go to Lush, get a bath bomb, just,
Gotta do.
do what you got to do, because it's going to be stressful, and it's also going to be, a time.
Yeah, literally a time.
But yeah,
Almost like Jason Derulo.
we have yet to decide if we're going to be doing an episode for Wednesday. We may be doing an episode on Wednesday post election for another day.
Yeah, we don't know where we're at yet.
We're figuring it out, because I definitely know that I'm not going to be in the headspace to talk about anything other than like watching what's his name, Dana Bash's ex-husband on CNN, press the screen. That's all I know is
And Daniel Dale just yelling about stuff.
yeah, talking about facts that are just should be
Also the Sassy Lady crew from MSNBC.
Truly.
Headed by Rachel Maddow. We gotta watch them too.
That's all. That's gonna be my focus. So we will have an episode next week. It's just a matter of when. So
what will it be about?
Yeah.
Will there be tears?
Will it be? Will there be booze?
Sadness?
Will we need a drink while that podcast? Maybe. But yeah. So until then, take care, and we will see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.